Hey guys, this is Fred from Fly Games, and this is episode 4 in how to build an online first-person shooter. In this episode we'll add support for player names and the ability to send server messages to clients and also for clients to communicate with the server. So let's get started with how to implement this in Unity. So first of all, we want to add support for adding the player's name to the game. So we want to have the ability for players to add a nickname to their player, and we want to display this above the player so we know who is who. So let's go into prefabs. Let's open our network player prefab. So here's our little dude. And what we want to do is we want to have their name tag above here. We want it to be a part of our model or a child of our model, so it follows everywhere this model goes. So let's go into Game Objects UI and let's add a Text Mesh Pro, and you will get a message that, well, we need the TMP Essentials, so just let's import that and let it load for a little bit. Alright, so now it's done. And it actually put it on the player UI canvas, which is not the one we want. Let's create a new UI canvas. Right, and we will change this into a world space canvas. And where did it go, my text mesh? It went into the UI, I think. Right, here we are. So let's move that into the canvas, and a world space canvas will follow the player wherever it is in the world. So it's not it's related to the rotation and orientation in the world. However, canvases is super big when they are moved into the world because of the units, because they are now in Unity units instead of pixel units. So we need to scale that down by a lot, so let's just go with 0.1 for start there, and we'll see where it wind up, and let's put it on 0, 0, 0, and here we go. Alright, so that's a bit better. So let's move our canvas. It's still very big, so let's change that into maybe 500 is an okay size, I guess, and maybe 80, something like that, and move it. So that could be a reasonable size, I guess. Maybe we need to make it a little bit smaller anyway, something like that. Awesome. So our text, let's scale it so it scales with the size of our canvas. And let's zero out everything so it becomes centered. There we go. And let's change our size of our text mesh box to actually fit. I'm not sure why it doesn't scale this automatically, but anyways, let's then center it. And then we can put it to auto size so it fills up, and we actually need to drag it up. Something like that. And here we will have the player nickname, and let's center it. And yeah, it's 72, it's as big as it gets for now. And the scale can be 1. Right, a lot of things we need to change. Awesome. So now we have our player name here, and it's in the canvas. It's in this canvas. So actually our text box has changed its size so it doesn't fit. Right, now we're sort of done. So that looks okay, and let's make sure that it's fully centered. And now we can get rid of that name, so we don't have to display a name as a starter. Let's change our name so it makes sense to us. Player nickname, and it's going to be a text, and canvas, let's call it world space canvas. So now we have the ability to have the player's name above our little dude. And it's a Text Mesh Pro that scales with the size of our canvas. So now we want to enhance our player so that the nickname is coming from the network. So let's go into scripts and network, and let's open our network player. Alright, so the first thing we want to take in is we want to add a new variable, and it's going to be a Text Mesh Pro UI, so that we can change the player's nickname. And we need to start using TM Pro for that to actually work. So that's great. And now what we want to do is we want to have a network variable. So similar to what we've had before, we are going to use a network variable to handle the player's nickname. So let's add a network string. So this is a special type that is created by Fusion, and it's to make sure that we are managing the size of the string, because otherwise it's sort of dynamic. So now we're saying that it's going to be a maximum size of 16, because that's all we need. And it's going to be called nickname, and we are going to have react to when it's changing, so that we can also change the player's nickname. So let's scroll down and let's add that. So what we will do is we will add an on nickname change, which is going to be a private void. And when this happens, we're going to say that, okay, nickname changed for player to nickname for the game object. So we're going to write the game object and the nickname they have received, and we are going to set the Text Mesh Pro's text to the nickname and use toString so it converts properly. Now, as we said before, this is not what is going to be called here, because we need it to be a static verb or a static function. So let's add our static on change like we have done before. So static on change on nickname changed, and we are going to call change behavior on nickname change, which is this. So that's all we need for the ability to actually show the nickname of the player. But we also need a way of actually setting the player's nickname. And as we remembered before, only the server is or the server or the input or sorry, the I can't speak today. The authority, the host authority, is the only one that can change these variables. So we need a way for clients, when they are joining, to tell the server that, hey, my name is whatever, and you should be using that for now. So what we will do is we will do that through an RPC. So the client will send an RPC message to the server and or the state authority. So now I'm using the right words. And it will tell that, hey, this is actually my name. I'm going to be called this. And the state authority will start using that name and will show it to all other clients. Awesome. So how do we do an RPC? Well, an RPC needs to be in a network behavior, and we already have a network behavior. So what we do then is we're going to say that, okay, our RPC has some parameters to it, and what we're going to say that, okay, the source is going to be the input authority, so it's going to be sent from whoever has the input authority, and it's going to be sent to the state authority, so it's going to be sent to our server or the host. So it's going to be called RPC underscore set nickname, and it's going to take in a string, and which is the nickname. So what we will do is that we're going to debug log it and say that, okay, we got an RPC set nickname, and then we will use this dot nickname with nickname. So it takes this variable and stores it in our class variable with the same name. Awesome. So that's all we need to actually receive the RPC, but we also need to send our RPC. So in this code, we have determined that, okay, we have the input authority, so we are the local player when this code is executed. So this code is going to be executed when we are spawned. So that means that we have joined the world and we have spawned ourselves. So once we have done that, we can say that, okay, we are going to set our nickname. And our nickname, we need to have a way of actually setting a nickname for the local player. So what are we going to be called? And we will create a new scene for this so that we can take in the input from the player and actually store it somehow. And just to make it super simple, we are going to use the PlayerRefs. So the PlayerRefs is a local storage that can be used, I mean, you can use other things like a game manager and things like that to store variables temporarily, but we're going to make it super simple for this tutorial, and we're going to use PlayerRefs. So that means whatever is in our string, player nickname, is going to be set as our nickname through the RPC. Okay, so let's save that and go back into Unity. So now we need to create a way of actually fetching the input from the user. So let's create a new scene, and we can take a basic URP, that's fine. And let's save this as in scenes, and we'll call it main menu. All right, let's add it to our build as well, so that we have done that, and put it as the first, so it's loaded first when the game is starting. Okay, awesome. So in this we want to create a UI object, and we want to take in an input. So let's add an input field, and it's going to be a text mesh pro. Here we go. And let's make our canvas a screen space overlay. That's correct. Let's scale it with the screen size and 920 1080 match, and we'll say that it's going to match half with half. I think that was the setting we had before anyway. Awesome. And let's take our input field and we'll put it on the center of the screen, and let's make it, I don't know, bigger. So 580, something like that. And let's change our enter text so it becomes, I don't know, I don't like this gray stuff. So let's take our placeholder and change that into full black and fully transparent. Right, there we go. And let's say that it's gonna be, it's gonna say enter player name. And let's center it, and let's we can auto size it for now, and let's that's fine. Enter player name, and then our text, we need to use the same color though. Let's move that. All right, input field, right? So let's make it a little bit more interesting. So we'll go into UI. Let's add a panel so that we have something that contains the whole screen. Let's reduce the size of it a little bit, something like that. And let's change that into some blue, maybe something like that. And let's just increase it. And the panel is going to be the background. So, all right, and let's add another UI. We need some type of nice game name. Ultimate online FPS game. All right, so that's what it's going to be called. Some nice title. And let's make it bigger. And then let's center that. And let's make it bold. 80. Yeah. Oh, sorry. And even bigger. 900. No, 1,000 maybe. Alright, Ultimate Online FPS game. Perfect. So now we have a very nice welcome screen, and it says enter player name. So this is going to be good enough for us. So let's save that, and then we will create a new script. So let's go into scripts, and let's call it a new folder for it, UI, and then we need a name for it. So let's go with main menu UI handler, and let's assign that to our canvas. We need to wait for it to compile, so that will take a little bit time. All right, let's drag and drop that, and let's save and go into our well, let's open the script in Visual Studio. So let's add using TM Pro, and then we will take in a new variable, and it's going to be our TM input field, and we can get rid of our update function. And actually, when we are starting up, we want to set our input field, if we already have a name to that field. So let's use our PlayerRef and check, do we have a key called player nickname? If we do, then let's set our input field text to it. And we actually don't need those brackets, so let's get rid of them. There we go. And so if we have already set our name, let's use that as the default. Actually, I didn't add a button to our UI, so that was a little bit stupid, but let's do that later on. And what we will say that, okay, we are going to have a new function called onJoinGameClicked. So if somebody is pressing that button, then we should store the player nickname and get started. So let's store the player nickname by using PlayerPrefs, set string with the player nickname from the input field. Then we're going to save it, and then we are going to load our scene with the scene manager. So later on we can create a lobby for it, but for now we're just gonna load the scene straight up, so it starts with our network stuff. And we need to use our Unity engine scene management for this to work. Okay, so let's store that and go back into Unity. So let's select our canvas and our input field. Let's drag that into the slot. And we also need to create our join button. So let's go UI and where are you? Button, Text Mesh Pro. Awesome. And we need to make it a lot bigger. So 500 times, let's make it a little bit less big, 400 times 100. And let's center it on the screen, a little bit below. And let's add our text, and let's just write join. And let's auto size it and let's make it bold. Okay, maybe we should change the button as well so it becomes some other color, something like that. Awesome color selection, I think. All right, so when we are clicking our button here, it's going to raise an event on click, and let's click the plus sign so we can assign something to this, and not our directional light, our canvas. Let's drag that in there, and then we have our main menu, and let's assign our on join game clicked. Okay, so if we store this now and take it for a spin. All right, let's wait for it to load, and then we can enter our name, and so it's tiny, so we can fix that later. And let's hit our join button, and then we have loaded the scene, and well, I fell off the world, and we have some errors. Let's look at what that is. Nickname changed for player to Freddy, so that's good. And we have then received our RPC set nickname Freddy, so that's working fine. But then we have a null reference exception, object reference not set to an instance of an object. So it means that we have forgot to assign our TextMesh Pro actually. So let's stop our game, and let's go into project, and let's find our player prefab, network player. And if we find our player prefab or network player, we can see that, okay, our nickname here is not, or actually this one, nickname TM, is not set at all. So we need to set that. So let's drag and drop our TextMesh Pro in there. And then we can as well fix this problem, which was that the text, our placeholder text is using auto size, and with a maximum of 72, and it is fully centered. But our text, when we are typing something, is not centered, and it's not using auto size. All right, so let's save that and try it again. All right, so let's press the join button, and let's check that in the console that we don't have any more errors. So yeah, 0 errors, 0 warnings, and we have the nickname changed. So let's bring in a few more clients. Let's reduce this one, and I've already compiled a few clients so we can get some extra ones. So let's have our name here, and we'll call one of them Eddie, and we'll call them, the other one is going to be called Best. So if we run around, we can see that, okay, we have a guy called Eddie, and where's the other one? He's hiding somewhere. I'm not sure where he is actually. There we go. And we have another one called Best, and if we take one of these clients, we can see that, yeah, okay, we have our host somewhere as well. I'm not sure where he went. There we go. Freddy is standing there. So we have Freddy and Best and Eddie joining the game. So that's perfect. So now we have the ability to set our nicknames, and the next thing that we're going to add is support for some messages in game, like Freddy shot Best, or Freddy shot Eddie, or Eddie well, fell off the world. So let's get started with that. So let's exit our clients, and let's stop our main game. So let's take our panel and copy that, and let's because we're going to reuse it, and then let's go into the player UI canvas, and let's create a new UI canvas, so it only updates that part of the messages that we want. Then we'll take our panel and make it a child of that, and let's make sure that the scale is set to 1 and that it fills the whole area. And then we can take our canvas, and we're not going to stretch it. We're going to have it as a fixed size, but anchored to the left part of the screen. And then we want to reduce this, the size of this. So our canvas right now, that's not our canvas. Let's reduce the size of it. And move it up a little bit. So it's attached to the edge of the screen. Something like that. And let's make it a little bit smaller. No, not our panel, our canvas. Yeah, something like that. And then make sure that it's scaled to 1, because that's what we want. Hold on, 1, 1. All right, now we can actually change the size of it, of the canvas. There we go. Yep, so that's perfect. Then we want to create our text messages that are going to be in here. So let's create a child, and it's going to be a layout group. to whatever it is in the message queue. And then we will increase our queue index. So when a message is updated, we are going to then just update our 3 text mesh pros with whatever is in the queue. If there's less messages than 3, then it's just gonna update those anyway. Okay, so let's save that and go back into Unity. So let's take our in-game messages and let's delete them so it doesn't say new text. And then we'll take our in-game messages UI handler that we just created, and let's make it a size of 3. And then we will actually reverse this order so that the newest is actually going to be placed on top. So the first element is going to be the latest text that we received. Yeah, perfect. So let's save that. So now we have the ability to display these messages, but they need to arrive somewhere. So we need to create a new script for it. We can actually reuse another script, but I prefer to keep it tidy. So let's create a new script. And let's call that network in-game messages. And let's open that in Visual Studio. So let's get rid of our update function because we don't need that. And we are going to do this with RPCs. So we need to be using Fusion, and it will be a network behavior. And we need to actually use our in-game message UI handler. So let's make that a variable, public in-game message UI handler. And then what we want is we want to be able to send RPCs. So let's add the RPC like we did before. And this one will have slightly different parameters. So it will be the source of the state authority. So only the server will be sending messages and the targets will be all. So it will send this RPC in-game message to everything in the game. So perfect. Let's add a debug so we know that we have received an RPC in-game message. And what we want to do then is we want to add it to our in-game message UI handler. So let's just check that it's not null before we actually try to add that. Awesome. So what we will have here is we are going to say that we need to be able to call this from other scripts. So we actually, let's remove the public because we don't need it to be public. We can need it, we want it to be a sort of private. So it's not called from another script. We want to have another public variable called send in-game RPC messages, so we can just format it a little bit. We'll take in the username and the message. So when we have received that, we are going to do some formatting. So we are going to say RPC in-game message. We're going to make the nickname bold and the message will follow after that. So perfect. Let's save that and go back into Unity. So let's go into our prefabs and the player prefab, network player. So we're going to attach this new message handler that we just created. I mean, you could create another object that is just responsible for that, and maybe that's nicer from a design point of view. But right now we will just add it here so it handles the messages in the player directly. So network in-game messages, here we have it, and we need to assign our canvas that we created for that. So in-game canvas, here we go. And let's save that. So then let's open our network player in Visual Studio. Then let's add a variable just so that we, as the server, want to say that, okay, a player has joined. So we just want to do it once, and we're going to react to when they are setting the nickname. So if later on in the game we want to have the ability to change the name in game, we only want to send this join message once. Then we need a reference to our network in-game messages. And that is going to be a part of our player object or the game object. So we can assume already that okay, we can use our awake and fetch our network in-game messages directly with get component. So then we have that cached. And what we want to do then is when a player has joined, then we want to send our nice RPC. So let's go and say that okay, if our is public not sent, so if we haven't sent our message yet, then let's do that. So we will use our network in-game, and we will use our send in-game RPC message with the user nickname that we have received, and we want to have the text joined after that. And then we will just set this that okay, we have actually sent it. Okay, perfect. So this will be executed by the state authority, because that's the one that received this, and also in our RPC we have specified that this is the one that should be able to send it. Then we can do the same thing for if the player has left. If object has state authority, we actually don't need to make that check, but let's do that anyway. And then we're going to use the message left. So the nickname is this. So we need to just make a toString, and it should be all happy with that. So the reason why it actually works here is because we're getting it as the string variable. So perfect. Let's save this and take it for a spin in Unity. So let's start our first client and join the game. So then we can see it, okay, Freddy joined, which is awesome. And then we bring in another client. So let's take this and let's bring that in as well. And let's change the name to Eddie, and let's join. So now we have some interesting problems. We can see that on this client we have Eddie joined, but on this client we have some type of problems with the text. So there are two problems with this. One is that the text is actually not updated properly. So this is the player 2. And if we look at this player, he has a canvas, and it is actually displaying the canvas of that player. So if we delete or disable that object, we can see that, okay, so for some reason we have two canvases, and the text is actually sent to this local player. So that's not what we intended. We only want to have one player UI canvas active, and we want to ensure that this player actually receives the information. And this player's canvas is actually detached because it's attached to our camera, which is free floating now. So it's here. So that means we have to think a little bit differently when we are assigning these, and make sure that we are updating this canvas for the local player and not each individual canvases for all the players. Actually, we should be disabling this, because there should only be one player UI canvas. The camera is not enabled, but the UI canvas is still enabled. So we need to make sure that we are disabling that and fixing that. So let's take care of that now. So the way that we can fix this, there are probably many solutions, but what we want then is our UI. We only want to fetch the local player's UI canvas. We don't want anything else. So we can do that by actually changing a bit of our code. So let's go into Network Player and open that in Visual Studio. So the challenge we have here is that the network player, when it's starting up, it is actually disabling the main camera, and if we and then later on it will also attach or detach the camera. So it means that we actually don't have any access anymore after this has been executed, because we can't say that, okay, our local player that we are caching, we can't access the UI from that. So we need to change that. So let's add a public variable local camera handler so that we can actually access that. Because once the code has run, then this camera has been detached, but we can actually access it anyway. So let's save that, and now we can go into a network in-game messages. So it's taking in the public in-game messages UI handler, but that's not the correct one. So let's remove the public in front of it, and then we will check that, okay, if it's null, then we are actually going to find it from the network player, the local player, its local camera handler, and get the component in children in-game messages UI handler. So that takes care of the first problem. And then we are also checking that if it's not null, then we are actually updating it. So that takes care of the first problem. Now we will direct the messages to the correct UI handler, which is going to be the the local player's UI handler. The second part is actually disabling the UI. So we can just take this in and say that, okay, we're going to have a public game object, and it's going to be the local UI. And if we are the remote player, then we can disable the local UI. There we go. Oh, sorry. All right, so now we can save and go back into Unity. So now we need to go into our player prefab. Let's open the network player, and here we have our network player. So we need to assign a couple of things: the local UI, player UI canvas, this is the one, and the local camera handler. So where is our local camera? That's the one. Perfect. So let's save that and take it for another spin. So let's start our client. Ready. And I'll bring in some additional clients that I just compiled. There we go. One. Let's bring in another one. All right, so let's join the one called Best, and then we'll take one called Eddie. So now we can see that, okay, our main client says that Eddie joined, and then Best joined, and Freddy joined last. So if we look at our Eddie client, which is this one, he's looking at the Best one. Yeah, now we have this message system that is working. There is still, however, one slight problem with it, and that's, well, when I'm shooting somebody, nothing will actually happen. Oh, yeah, and the text will remain, even though the player has died. So that's something we can easily fix. But there is another issue, and that's if we take this client and we leave, then it's gonna say that Freddy left, but Freddy is my main client, so he didn't leave for sure. And if we leave this other client, we can see that, okay, Best left, Freddy left, and Ed left, but this client is still here. And the reason why this is happening is because the server is executing the code on all the clients. So we need to figure out that we are just doing it for the one who actually left. So we need to change our code for that to work properly. So let's exit play mode. So the problem that we're having is caused by the network player. So let's open that in Visual Studio. So the problem that we are seeing is that this event, player left, is called on all of the clients that is connected to our game. So if we have 3 clients connected, then it means that this code will be executed 3 times by the state authority, because there are 3 game objects connected, or 3 network players connected. And on top of that, the player who actually left is the PlayerRef. It's this player. And if we just type out the nickname that is associated with this network player, it means that we are not actually finding the correct player. So we need a way of correlating our PlayerRef with our actual network object, the network player. So how do we do that? Well, Photon Fusion actually supplies a way of doing that for games that has this setup where the player is controlling one object. So what we need to do is we need to set the player object, and we supply the object input authority and our object. So by doing this, we can say that, okay, we are actually, this is going to be this player's object. So when we are coming into our player left, then actually we need to do some more things. So as we said before, we know that the nickname here is not the correct one, so we can't just write that. Rather, what we need to do is we need to make some checks before that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to say, okay, can we get the object's network ID, or the player's object network object? So we use runner try get player object, supply it with the player, and it will return a network object. And in this case, we will call it player left network object, because that's the player who left. So this will execute on all the clients. So what we need to do is make sure that we are actually receiving this player. So how do we do that? Well, we can just compare it. So we can say that if the player left network object is the same as the object, then it means it's this one. And now it becomes a little bit more complicated because of our design choice of having our RPC on the actual client. Because we could go in and say that, okay, we're going to send the RPC from this object. But as it's disconnecting and it's leaving the game, chances are pretty big that it won't actually have time to send the RPC before it has already left. So then it will just be lost. So what we need to do is we need to do some dirty tricks. So we'll use our local player, because this is well, the host in our case, the last player that's going to be still alive and connected to the game. We're going to get his component for network in-game messages, and we're going to use that to send the in-game RPC message. We're going to take the players who left network object, get its player network player's nickname to string, and then type left. So that was a bit of dirty code there, I think, a little bit anyway, but hopefully that should solve our problem. So let's save that and try it again in Unity. So let's start our game. And let's join with Freddy. And then I'll bring in a client that I had already prepared. So there we go, and another one. All right, so let's join Eddie. And we called the other one Best, I think. So Eddie joined. And Best joined. All right, so now we can see that all three clients are reporting that Best and Eddie and Freddy has joined, except for Best, who is the last client. He only knows about himself. So let's go and disconnect the Best client. So we can see that on our other two clients, we can see that Best left, and that's the only thing. And let's leave on with Eddie, and we can see that Eddie left. Okay, so that solves that. So while we're at it, let's add some more messages. So let's go into character movement handler and handle the case where the player is falling off the world. What we want to make sure that first of all that we are getting our network in-game messages, so that we can handle that. And in our awake function we can get that. So let's do that. And then when we are falling outside of the map, here we go, then we want to type some type of message when that happens. We'll use our, we already had a debug log for that, so let's use our network in-game messages and send an in-game RPC message, but we need our network player with the nickname, and then we're gonna type in fell off the world. So let's add our network player as well, and we can just fetch that with get component as per usual. All right, perfect. So let's save that, and now we should get a message when we're falling off the world. Then let's do the same thing for the HP handler. So whenever somebody is getting killed, we want to have a message about that. So let's add our network in-game messages and our network player, and let's get those in the awake function. So then we have our on-take damage, and that is something we need to modify, because now we also need to know who did the damage. So we know that we took damage, but we need to know who caused the damage as well. So let's add a string damage caused by player nickname. And when we are dying, then we can say that, okay, we have died. So in that case, we are going to, before we are sending this, we're setting the debug log. Let's do a network in-game message, send in-game RPC, and then we say the name of the player first, who killed the other player, and we're using bold, so it becomes a little bit nicer to read. Awesome. So let's save that and go back into Unity. So now we have an error because we have not provided an argument, which is required by the HP handler. So let's click that, and on take damage now takes in the nickname of the player who did the damage. So we need to get that. So let's do it as we've done it before. We'll use our network player, and we'll fetch it in the wake function, and on take damage we will use that. So we have our network player and player nickname and toString. Awesome. So let's save and go back into Unity. So let's try that. All right, let's join Freddy. We'll get our clients that I've just compiled, and here we go. All right, Freddy fell off the world. Awesome. So Best is joining as well, and let's join in the other client. best, and we will call it Eddie. All right, perfect. So Eddie joined, Eddie fell off the world, and here we have Freddy. So let's have Eddie killed Freddy. Perfect. And Eddie will kill Best now. Yeah, Eddie's pretty awesome, so he's killing everybody. Best. Oh yeah, we forgot that we are leaving our UI text behind when the player is dying, so we need to fix that. So Eddie is pretty awesome, but Eddie got disconnected, so he left, and then our Best left as well. Alright, perfect. So luckily solving that problem is not that difficult. Let's go into our prefabs and our network player. So I accidentally made the world space canvas a child of our network player, but the model here gets hidden when a player dies. So if we just move this and make it a child under our model instead, then that will get hidden when the model as well gets hidden by the code that is executing when a player is dead. So let's just save, and now that works as well. So another problem that actually my kids noticed when they were testing this game is that if you are joining the game and if you are playing as a client, so let's make room for a client that I already compiled, and yeah, then you join the game, and if you are running backwards and firing, you can kill yourself, or if you're shooting and jumping. So that's not very good. And I checked around the reason for this, and it's something to do with how the raycasts are being created, and that the object is being moved at the same time. So the solution to this is actually to upgrade Fusion to a later version. So if you are using 1.1.1 with build 512, then you actually get a new option. So if you go into the weapon handler, I just upgraded now, then there is a new option called ignore input authority on your raycasts. So this solves that whole problem. So if we try that again and compile the game, so then let's load the game and press join, and let's bring in our client as well. There we have it. So let's join with Eddie. So if we run backwards and fire and jump and fire, we can see that we can no longer kill ourselves, which is great, and we can still shoot the other player. So now it is working better. Perfect. I'd like to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters. It helps us with every single contribution that we can get. So please consider supporting us on Patreon. The link is in the description. This concludes this episode, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and the bell to get a notification when the next video is out.